God, I miss the North Country, no power lines, no dead-end streets. Mother Nature waits for me back in the North Country.
Hello, and thanks for coming along on another Northwoods Ramble. I'm Seeley Dave, your Hyperborean reporter. I'm happy to be back with you after about a month and a half, 2-month break since our last show. This is show number 10. Show number 9 was probably 6-8 weeks ago. And that happened due to a variety of reasons. Deer hunting, Thanksgiving, TJ got busy and hadn't been able to be on the show. And so things have changed. That holiday season has passed us. The deer hunting unsuccessful is mostly over for me. And TJ's got kind of a new situation that he has a little bit more bandwidth. So I'm happy to report he's joining this show again, and he'll be on right after this intro, where we get into some sort of ephemeral topics of this changing shoulder season that we're in right now, and this weird winter, sort of almost winter that we're experiencing. But anyway, I'm happy to be back with you again. I'm happy you came along, and I'm once again coming to you from my little log cabin office at the base of the Hollywood Hills, just outside bustling downtown Seeley, Wisconsin. Seeley is, of course, nestled along the banks of the mighty Namakagon River, where you'll find the Leonard Lodge, a very cool old school and former school and town hall that's been converted into a really nice hotel. It's only got, I think, 10 rooms, but they're super cool, 2 stories. They've even got old blackboards in them. And that's right next to the Sawmill Saloon, the Saloon of Bad Decisions, as my wife likes to call it. She's out with the owner, Cindy Ferraro, tonight. They're going to the Cable Chamber annual dinner. And they may end up back at that saloon, and hopefully my wife doesn't make any bad decisions. But it's less than a mile away, so if I have to go pick her up, Cindy's driving, but if I have to go pick her up, I can do that. And of course, the Sawmill Saloon has usually got a tasty Angry Minnow beer on tap. Angry Minnow's brewed right down the road in Hayward. I'm partial to their IPAs, but also like the Big Brook. And you can also get, of course, a absolutely delicious old-fashioned. And whether you like your old-fashioned the traditional Wisconsin way, our new official state beverage, we're, I think, the only state in the nation to have a state cocktail, and ours is the brandy old-fashioned sweet. But whether if you like yours with brandy or whiskey, sweet, pressed, sour, perfect, they're all delicious at the Sawmill, but they're all served with just a few dashes of regret, so careful how many you order. Anyway, I just want to get back to that topic of chasing or the ephemeral. And as a photographer, that's something that we're sort of taught to do. The whole Henri Cartier-Bresson decisive moment. You're always looking to capture that perfect moment, and it's fleeting. And a lot of it depends on both, what's happening in front of you as well as the light and, all that sort of stuff. But also in terms of outdoor activities, I find myself, because I want to make those sort of like impactful images, I'm always looking for the best light or the best snow or the best ice. And one of the things that I like doing is riding on smooth ice. There was a little bit of that in the intro that I shot a long time ago when the bay froze right outside Summerfest in Milwaukee. And I haven't hit that just right up here yet. And so this year, though it looked like it was about to happen right before the Santa Cycle Rampage, which was December 2nd, and I was scheduled to go down to the Rampage, but I was debating, I don't want to leave if we get that perfect wild ice, that perfectly smooth lake, frozen just barely enough to ride on, with no snow, and it's like a mirror and reflects the trees and the sky, and the sun, and I didn't want to miss that. But then it looked like the temperatures weren't going to be in the 40s, so I thought, oh, the lakes won't freeze enough to make it safe, and so I went down for the Rampage. And that Sunday, the Sunday after the Santa Cycle Rampage, the south end of Lake Owen froze just perfectly with no snow at all in it, and the resort owners and their family at Lake Owen Resort made some amazing drone video footage. I've got a link in the show notes. It's also in my discussion with TJ a little bit later. I show some of that, and he did just a fantastic job of his family out there ice skating on this absolutely stunning frozen lake. And so that just got me, and I was bummed, like, oh no, I missed it. I was at the Rampage, which I had a great time at the Santa Cycle Rampage, saw a bunch of friends, got to stop in at the Concertina bar, hey Andy, and one of my happy places, heard some good polka, had a few good beers, and all in all, had a great weekend with friends. But in my usual, I used to be like this when I was younger. If I missed an after party, I went to an after party after a show, a concert, and I was at the wrong after party because the band was at a different after party, and there was a basement concert there. I would get mad even though I had a great time, I'd get mad that I missed the better party. And here again, I was kicking myself for missing the best ice, and it doesn't last long. And maybe we'll get a little bit more, you never know, but most of the lakes now are covered with snow. So although they're still nice to ride on, and I'll still be doing a bunch of that, it's not that gorgeous, perfect, black ice that I was looking for. So it just has got me reviewing my thought process about this, my fascination with the ephemeral, and getting up in the middle of the nights when my Aurora Borealis CME warning goes off to go running to try to photograph the northern lights because they don't last long in the spring. Early podcasts, I'm always showing all the ephemeral spring wildflowers. So I don't know. Part of living here is enjoying the moment and not necessarily kicking yourself for missing a different moment. So I've been struggling with that a little bit, and I haven't really landed on how I'm going to resolve that personally. But at my age, probably I'm not going to change, right? So anyway. So stick around for the interview with TJ that's coming up in just a minute or two, and I just want to remind people that you can pretty much ride anything right now up here. The conditions are just a trace of snow over most things, and so you don't really even need studded tires unless you're out on a frozen lake. All the gravel roads are great conditions. Most of the trails are in great conditions. Of course, check the Canba Trail Conditions website, and if you're skiing, check the Birkie Trail Conditions website. So Birkie's been actively making snow up at the Telemark area and the Birkie Start area, and I believe they've got about 5K. And we had some skiers here last weekend for the Ski to Ski, and a friend of mine who lives up on Perry Lake has been skiing over there, and he said the conditions are actually really good. So it may be the only good Nordic skiing in the state. I don't know where else they've got it. Elsewhere they probably are making snow. Other places, or maybe a mountain town has got it, but so you can't go ski all of our, gazillion miles of ski trails up here, but the Birkie's been doing a good job making snow at the Telemark and Start area up by Cable. So feel free to come on up for that. And like I said, you can ride your mountain bike, your fat bike, heck, you can ride your gravel bike on the conditions that we have right now, and it's still very pretty. So, so come on up and join us. And with that, I'm going to jump right off into my chat with TJ. Thanks for coming on this Northwoods Ramble. All right, so hey everybody, guess who's back? Welcome back, TJ.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while since I put out a podcast. I mean, deer hunting, Thanksgiving, blah, blah, blah. Yep. So my life got busy too. Your life has been complicated.
Well, got a lot more uncomplicated, I guess.
Between Beth's mom and everything else.
Yep.
And and now you got a little bit of a break and a job change, which has yet to fully shake out.
Right.
And we can get into more of that in the future.
Sounds good.
When it shakes out.
Sounds
but I'm
good.
glad you have more time and could come back on the podcast.
No, it's good to be back.
Thanks.
Good to be back.
So I thought since I did the last couple of podcasts by myself or with interviews with other people that you weren't here, I thought we'd sort of catch back up with you and focus a little bit back over on the Telemark trails. It's
Sweet.
winter here, but...
Or is it?
Or is it? Yeah, right. El Nino or La Nina, which one is it? I don't remember. But right, it's going to be 40 tomorrow. Right.
And barely any snow.
And barely any snow. Right. So we can get into that as too, because I've been packrafting and whatnot, because that's what you do when.
That's right. You get pretty creative.
Yeah. Right. Getting to that, could you actually ride those trails right now? Are they technically officially closed?
Officially, they're closed right now.
But if it's below freezing all the time, I don't see any reason why.
So the one thing, I was up there yesterday, and there was some fat bikers who had ridden, like gone under the trail close signs and under the ribboning, and the one thing. Even though there's not a lot of snow, there's a little bit of snow.
Right.
So that little bit of snow could get compacted, and then we're going to have ice.
Oh, and then that
when
works spring comes, it slows everything down.
It does.
That's true. I hadn't thought about that.
And I saw their tracks because I was curious, and they went up the backside, which is now Nirvana.
Yeah. And that's kind of a cross-country connector trail too, right? So it'd be hard to keep people off.
Definitely hard to keep. But then I saw where they had gone down Jumpasaurus, and they made it to the first berm and turned around.
Okay.
So I don't know if they were scared or what.
It's probably a little more slippery. Yeah.
It's hard to keep them off, right?
So, we had this issue when I was working at Canva, and in the previous system for closing, and Canva trails rarely close, right? They only close in that weird brief period where you got the freeze-thaw cycle, and so they're open in the winter when it's full-on snow and they're groomed and stuff like that. And then I think you can even ride non-groomed trails when it's full-on winter if you want to, if you can get through a foot of snow or whatever. I don't know why you'd want to, but you could in theory, right? So Canva trails don't close when it rains, they don't close, but they have that spring and fall season where they close for that month and a half time for the freeze thaw cycle, right before winter starts and right in the spring. Same time, the ATV and snowmobile trails close. So what Canva used to do is they used to just put up a caution tape, like no explanation, no nothing. And I mean, that doesn't send much of a message to people. And so when I was there, I worked with the rest of the Canva trail guys to let's put up at least some guys are going to always break the rules, right? But if we put up a little sign that says trail closed because the freeze thaw screws things up, and it screws things up for a long time. So you're always going to get violators, right? But so maybe Birkie could do something like that.
Oh, I think they are.
A better informational sign that try to explain to people why you should stay off it. Not like rules are rules.
There's a couple things going on there where, the Birkie, I think the plan is to put gates up so they can, even in the summertime, they'll be, because they're giant flow trail and they're giant berms, they're going to need a lot of work. And so even on a Tuesday in July, they're going to need to close those trails down to do work on them. So there's that, they're a different type of trail, so they need a different type of maintenance on them. The trails aren't really seeded yet. I mean, they're not really bedded down. So even when it's super cold and frozen, you can see where people are basically taking chunks out of the trail because that's not completely compacted.
I mean, they barely opened last year, so they hardly got ridden in. And once they're ridden in, there'll be a little bit that more of that compaction, that
For
natural
sure.
compaction that happens.
And I think that's what we're seeing on Nirvana, right? That did get a lot of traffic, and it has those just natural soils, not the capped material on. So, but at the same time, the big difference between like Canva trails and Telemark trails is Telemark's private.
Right.
So
the ABSF can officially close them and
call the
open them.
sheriff.
They don't, right.
You know, like there's that. I mean, and that's something that they haven't leaned on, and I don't think they will. But now as a private citizen, I see somebody out there and they're messing the trail up.
Right.
I'm going to knock them out.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, like that's
but I do think, like I said, I think information goes a long way. And instead of just like a caution tape thrown up or something, you know,
if
people don't, they're like, what the heck, the ground's frozen.
Right.
So some information, and then the snowmobilers and the ATVs, because they've got 600 miles of trails that are all over the place, and snowmobiles, some of those trails are easements on private property that are officially closed. They really, there's some that get gated, but most of them, they just rely on their Facebook page, their social media and stuff to tell people stay off. And I don't know how, you do see their signs, stay on the trail or we're going to lose them, stuff like that they put up to self-police themselves. And
they've lost some.
And they have lost some because they're always going to be jerks.
Yep, there always are.
Yeah, right. So,
and at the same time, like I get it where a lot of the people who come here and ride, they're coming here to ride, right? I don't think there's a local populace who's like, well, I put a lot of time in these trails. Screw them, I'm riding them.
Yeah.
And then there's also the idea
visitors
of
I just drove 6 hours to get here.
And I'm spending money here and here. I've got a right to ride these trails.
Right.
Or I gave a donation to this. Now here's my.
So Canva does have a good trail conditions section on their website, and they're generally active on their social media channels. Birkie has, for skiing, has a great trail conditions. They have live webcams. They have updated real-time maps of where the piston bullies have been grooming and so I would imagine the Birkie's probably going to improve that section for their mountain bike trails.
Yeah, and I think that's in the works. Yeah, I think that's something they're working on. But
so all that helps. But right now trails are closed and people really shouldn't ride them again. And maybe explain a little bit better, because we kind of glossed over it, that if you ride, even though the ground's frozen and covered with some snow, if you ride those trails now,
you're compacting the snow and you're making ice. The ice is going to sit on top of the trail, and then that will prevent maintenance in the spring. And
so the rest of the snow, we've seen this, all the rest of the ground next to trails that have been groomed all winter for fat biking is snow-free, and there's a frozen line of compacted ice on the groomed trail that lasts for another 3 weeks or something, because it's been compacted and it's frozen, and that's something you don't want.
No, and especially with the big bermed out cap trails, some of that capping material was still, wet when it froze. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I was talking about, jumping onto that a little bit, I was talking with Mike Repiak the other day, and Mike Repiak from IMBA Trail Solutions. He was talking, he brought up the crusher fines and that used for capping, the chip seal. He called it chip seal, I call it crusher fines, but it's the crushed concrete or crushed rock that they spread on the top. And both of us, because as a cyclist, as an urban cyclist, you hear the word chip seal and you're like, it's going to be loose gravel. It's a negative connotation. When it comes to these bike optimized, purpose-built, machine-built, bermed features, that stuff works really well.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So,
and you've got some of that.
We have a little bit of a hybrid of that.
Okay.
Some of our soil just naturally was that way, like with small fines. And so that got worked in. There are some operations where they actually take like a crusher, a machine.
Because I thought Rock Solid has a rock crusher like that to make.
They do.
To make.
I think Aaron does. I'm not sure about that, but I think that he does, and I think they've done that operation in other places. We just didn't do it at Telemark.
Oh, I thought it had.
We were heading down that route,
gotcha.
and the reason we didn't is because we found enough native clay on the.
But there's a couple of sections that I've ridden that they've got that grippy rock. Like it feels like that.
No, it does. It looks like that, and that's kind of what I think brought that to the forefront.
Oh, okay.
That was natural. That's the native soil right
gotcha.
there, and it's in the sections usually that are kind of in the woods on the uphill section.
I don't remember where I saw it, but I was like, oh, this is like that. Crusher fines or the chip seal stuff that Mike was talking about.
But for some of those big, the green and the blue run last year, the field trip and Jumposaurus, there was a moment where we were having such a hard time figuring out the capping that was going to be the option we were going to use. But we decided against that and went full capping.
So right now, why don't you just quickly go through, I'm going to put up a couple of photos and put us in the corner, and why don't you just kind of go through what got built this year, and then what sort of like the general idea is, what trails are going to, and you don't have to necessarily, they've got a lot of wacky names, to the degree that you can remember them, well, you can name them if you like.
Sure.
Are we in the upper corner here? Let's see, there we are. Cool. All right, we're in it. And that's you.
That's me.
Hitting one of the berms. So like monster 10-foot, anybody that hasn't ridden, monster like 10-foot berms and jumps and stuff.
That's Jumposaurus. So the top part, there's a kind of a service road that works through the middle of the property. And the whole top part is big flow, no real rock. And then as it crosses that service road, it gets a little bit more techy. There's a couple rock drops. One's optional. One's kind of mandatory, but you can roll it. And that got built. I think that's the crown jewel of the.
That's up at the top too.
Yep, that's up at the top. That's the kind of the first jump.
Yeah. And
all rollable though,
And this is so this is Jumposaurus is blue.
Jumposaurus
is blue jump line. Blue down one way downhill. And that's at the bottom. That's at the bottom of that. And I'm not a big jumper, but I rode it and I could roll anything I felt I didn't want to I didn't want to hit. So basically you've got Wisen Up.
Yep, Wisen Up, the uphill trail.
It's a windy switchback. It's long, but you can just sit in your granny, and most people are okay to climb all the way up to the top on Wisen Up.
Yep. And then where Wisen Up comes up to the top, and then it's you have the option to take the green downhill, which is field trip, and that's kind of like a mini Jumposaurus. It's just super flow, no rock.
Or like it felt to me like a gravity cavity on steroids.
Yeah.
Sort of. Either one or the other.
Right.
Either an easy version of Jumposaurus or like an extreme version of gravity cavity or Flow Mama or something like that.
Yep. Like a couple jumps, a lot of berms, a lot of switchbacks, less than like 5% grade. And then at the bottom, it's kind of, as you cross that service road, it gets really windy. A lot of berm after berm after berm.
Right.
Like that gravity cavity
that's
feeling.
What I meant. That's the feel I had, yeah.
So it kind of gets a little dizzying, which is kind of fun.
I like it. No, it's awesome.
But you're like, is there really going to be another berm? Is there really going to be
I said that, I think I asked Joe, like, are we like the berm capital of the United States now or something?
Yeah. With the lack of like big exposed rock there, and we had a hard time finding clay, but then when we found it, it's really good to build that kind of thing.
Sure.
So that's kind of like working with what we have and optimizing like modern trail building and all of that. So, yeah.
So then the black is open?
Black is open, yeah. Rindal, named after the old ski slope that was there, old ski run. Yeah, and that's like
the Telemark ski run.
Yeah, the Telemark ski run. Yeah. So yeah, that's like a combination of rock, jump, choose your own adventure towards the bottom.
It's steep though.
It's super steep, and there's like some natural. Caden did such an amazing job. Caden and Braden it's like. Well, I guess everybody was on that. All of Rock Solid was on that. Now that I think about it, I was like trying to think of who did it, and Jude and Steve, and all those guys, like they all had a little input because that was the last trail that we built. So yeah, super cool. And there's some natural berms, like some like just things that were already in the hillside where you're jumping over roots and then diving back in. But it's kind of this same kind of thing really with both the green and the blue trail. Just steeper and a little bit rawer. Yeah. So it's like this constant like gravity cavity feel, like going down and up and Yeah.
And then backside is the two-way blue Nirvana.
Which
leads over to Once. And Even Flow, which were built near the start area, the Birkie start area.
And that'll also get you to Ojibwa, to the Canvas, to all the Canva trails. So yeah, it's kind of a hybrid, cross country trail, but like definitely a lot more on the flow side.
Right. And so then for next year, you said you're walking the trails and talking to Joe Vadamancourt, who's kind of the overall project manager for the Telemark Village project. What were you guys thinking might be the sort of priority list for next year?
I think there's a lot on the table that we can choose from. There seems to me to be a need for a black enduro trail. Black enduro trail that's a little less jumpy and a lot more tech. I think that we have a lot of riders who are looking for that. And there's one that's marked right now that's pretty long trail.
Do you think will you have to bring in rock or something like that to make it more enduro-y, or do you think you have what you need?
I think we have what we need. I think we can make it pretty raw. And there's a lot of rock in that line and a lot of gravity and a little bit of, the trail looks like it's going to be a masterpiece. Like it's real, like it seems really long when you're walking downhill and looking at it. Much longer than the other trails.
And you ride a lot of enduro courses, so you've got a lot of regional references to compare it to.
Right, and that's where I'd like to see, whatever they do. But it seems like an enduro event will be held there soon. Like setting it up for that makes sense. And then watching who was riding there all summer, like. The green will be probably another green trail and a flow trail, but if you can get to the top of that hill, you're most likely riding blue.
But the other thing that I noticed about last year was people sessioning sections.
For sure.
And they'd start at the bottom and they'd only ride a quarter of the way up to hit the little jump with a hip at into that last berm on the bottom. And so you don't necessarily... You can have fun without riding all the way to the top every time, or you don't even have to ride all the way to the bottom. You can just sit in this middle section or top section and session
and go
over stuff that you want to practice or that you just like.
For sure. With those old ski runs, it makes it so easy just to get back up to the top.
Right.
But I was, when the beginning, before we opened the trail, we had two families that were up there, and we rode up, and there was a 6-year-old, maybe 7, that was like rode up to the top of the blue, and we had practiced the one rock roll, and like he knew not to go over the rock drop, and he was as comfortable going down that blue as he was the green, even though the green's more optimized. It's the green trail,
right?
But he was like, it was more bang for his buck, right, to get all the way up there and do it. So it was like because on the docket was some shorter green trails for people to like repeat.
Yeah. Like, maybe that's not necessary.
I don't know. It's a thing that we're talking about.
You've got Once over there.
Right. That's a true green trail.
Yeah. Right.
Right. So that's why I'm thinking if you can get to the top, you're going to want to go all the way down.
Especially if you build the blues so it's rollable.
Right.
As long as there's no gaps or big drops that aren't there isn't an alternate for, then it really doesn't matter.
Right.
You don't, and maybe that is a better use of limited dollars to not build more green.
Because green trails cost a lot, and the maintenance on a green trail is astronomical compared to even a blue trail.
And as long as you've got, I mean, I don't know, like as long as you've got, like I said, a couple of them already, that's probably enough, right? I mean,
yeah, I would think if you sessioned that green, if you were working your way up, that's the idea, right? It's progressive. But if you've ridden the green trail, you most likely can ride that blue trail.
And as long as you've got the green to start with, or a couple of those greens, then, but if I look anywhere, when I lived in Milwaukee and Ray's indoor park opened, within a year, suddenly and they were rebuilding it every summer to build new different features inside, but everybody could do anything in it within a year or so.
For sure.
And when the Rock opened up in Franklin, all of a sudden, all these people that rode at Ray's were now riding outdoor features, and it wasn't long before they're tabletopping the biggest, the biggest jumps. So it seems like, particularly with younger riders who will just go out there every day and session stuff over and over, boy, a heavy investment in the easy stuff seems like kind of wasted, because like they're very quickly gonna not want to ride that anymore.
Right, and if you're athletic enough to really get to the top of that hill, you're most likely
experienced enough to
roll the blue.
Yeah.
And
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and then the blue trail is much longer than the green trail, so you're like, well, why? I love riding the green trail.
Yeah.
And warming up on the green trail and like trying to find ninja lines and whatnot.
Right.
But once you get to that point of the uphill, you might as well just go a little bit further.
Yeah.
And then we saw, what you just described, we saw at the bike park opening. We had, the picture that we were showing previous was of two young people from Wausau who, they've been riding in Wausau. They're really good riders. We had a local NICA racer who's a good racer, never really jumped in his life, watched these guys, ride with these guys, and he went from not being able to jump off a curb at the beginning of the day to clearing that last big jump, right?
Yeah.
So that's like...
Yeah, there was a younger, or maybe older, looked like female NICA rider there too.
Young.
Is she young?
Yeah, she was her first year in NICA last year.
So I watched her.
She's like a sixth grader.
Right. So I watched her, and she just sessioned that bottom jump that we were looking at over and over, and within 8 or 10 times she was clearing it all the way to that hip, and roosting around the berm.
Which was so cool to see. I asked her dad. I was like, "Well, where does she ride?" Because I believe she's from Rice Lake.
Okay.
And he was like, "Oh, she's been building jumps in her backyard. This is what she's been dreaming of."
Okay. Well, now we can just jump over that real quick, because now they have Timberland Hills that OTM is putting in over there. So that's a new trail system.
Yeah, she's going to be...
I asked Tracy Paradise for the story that's going to be in that overview update in the Wisconsin Bike Fed's Ride Guide, how she sees that. And she sees it mostly as sort of a super local gem that will also attract some riders, but not necessarily a full-on destination trail center, but certainly worth the trip, particularly if you're coming up north. But it's mostly for the community, the surrounding community that already uses those ski trails over there, I guess. So,
right. Cool.
So that'll grow a whole nother group of riders that can do all this
and they've
stuff.
got great builders down there with Adam and Micah and Adam Buck with Pathfinder, and
that's halfway between Eau Claire and here, right? So you've got you've got all the Pinehurst riders and stuff down in Eau Claire,
or the Twin Cities too. It's on the way to the Twin Cities, so it's
it's definitely worth a stop.
I'm excited to check it out. I have not been down there, but
yeah. So well, cool. Well, thanks for that update on those trails. I guess we could jump into a little bit of what I've been up to.
Love to hear it. Yeah.
So with this weird season where the gravel roads are all still gravel, basically. A little bit of snow cover right now we've got. But I went down to Milwaukee on the weekend of December 2nd to do the Santa Cycle Rampage. That ride down there. I think they had 1,500 registered Santas, but there's a lot. It started out as a free ride. It was a pub crawl when I started.
Right.
It got to about 300 people, and then we turned it into like an official ride because I had to insure it. I was getting nervous and stuff for the Bike Fed fundraiser. But it's always struggled with, well, this used to be free. All these people that.
Right.
So I bet there were 3,000 people dressed up in Santas and dreidels and reindeer and Scrooges and everything else riding. And I'll see if I can I'll roll some video. I'll roll some video in the background while we, and I'll go to 2 and put us in the corner again. And so this is at Lakefront Brewery, which was one of the traditional stops. That's the brewery. You can see to the left of my buddy with the gluten-free beer in his hand, which is their New Grist beer is the most popular gluten-free beer in the world.
Nice.
Because they were the first people to make a gluten-free beer. So the Lakefront Brewery guys. So this is, again, outside that, and it's only like an 8-mile route, the Santa Cycle Rampage or so. It's short, it's police-led, 1,500 people, families, kids, so it's a very slow pace, so it's about 8 miles. There aren't official stops anymore, but Lakefront always was. There's Santa gathering places for people to go to after the ride is done, but some people just end at Lakefront. They don't finish where they started. They just stop here. So you can see it's sort of like, it's, Santa's everywhere. And little kids, lots of little kids. And anyway, it was a great time. I saw a bunch of good friends, and but I was debating going down because we're right at that time when we hadn't had any snow, lakes were freezing, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get that black ice, Right. And then it warmed up to like 40 again. It was like 40 something degrees that day. I'm like, the ice isn't going to be good. It's not going to be good. And sure enough, that Sunday, South Lake Owen froze. I'll show a little bit of that video later after we get through here. Let me see if I can. Oh yeah, so this naughty Santas. There are naughty Santas everywhere, and I thought this is pretty funny. This happens all the time. This little girl's walking up. Looks like maybe her first ramp, and then you have the. And Mom says, that's a bad Santa.
That's not Santa's helper.
Yeah. But yeah, so that it's pretty cool, but so this is what I missed. This is what I missed. I'll play this a little bit. So this video was shot very well done, drone video by the guy the family from Lake Owen Resort.
Nice.
So I think that's his family out on the ice. It features, it's got the Flight of the Bumblebee music playing in the background the whole time.
It's beautiful, huh?
I know. And he said there was 3 to 4 inches of ice across that South Bay. So I was like, on the way back up, I saw this before I went back, and I was like, oh man, I totally wouldn't have left if I knew this was happening. Because I wanted to make this exact same video, except me on a fat bike with my studded tires riding. So I missed it. But I'm like, oh, no worries. There's no snow in the forecast. I'll just come back up and do it another time. And so I went Monday afternoon. Another me chasing the ephemeral northern lights. But I went Monday afternoon, and South Lake Owen Drive, like, I asked you, where do you get on legally? Where is the legal place to access South Lake Owen Drive? Because it's all private around Lake Owen. And you didn't know.
Nope.
Thornquist, I asked him too, and he said, even though it's posted private boat ramp, Mitros Landing Road, he said he's lived here for 13 years, whatever, over on Perry Lake. That's where they always launch their canoe at Mitros Landing. They said they've never had a problem. But it is clearly posted private boat ramp and closed. So I drove up to it Sunday afternoon at about 3:30, or Monday afternoon about 3:30 when I got back to ride the ice. And I'm like, I saw the big... And then the guy's driveway next to it has got a Glock handgun, protected by Glock or whatever. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go. So I went up to Two Lakes Campground. Because I'm like, all right, that's the closest other place other than the park picnic and the boat landing on the far north end. So that's the closest place I could get to. Light was fading, and so I got on at the park. And this ice is about 1.5 inches thick. You can see, though, I stayed, because I wasn't sure, is the ice going to... Sometimes the ice is thicker in the middle of the lake than it is by the shore, and sometimes it's thinner. Right. So I just stayed, you can see, because the ice was perfectly clear black ice, I could see, and it was only 1.5 inches thick. Right. I could see right through it. So I was never more than 2-3 feet deep when I'm riding here. But I could hear it making all those cracking noises. So I went back and forth along this a few times, so I've been doing research on black ice. And so there's a formula for calculating ice strength, Gould's formula, and then ice, and there's a guy it's got 30,000 Facebook or YouTube fans that all he does is do black ice stuff, and he must be an engineer because he's always showing all these formulas and stuff like that. And so he also said, like, ice, even though it's only 1.5 inches thick, because it sits on top of water, and the water is, inelastic. It's the water that, it's not just 1.5 inches of ice. If you had 1.5 inches of ice here, we could crack it with our hands, right? Because it's in the air. But it's sitting on top of water, which is inelastic. So like this ice is, I can see underneath me, it's there's little waves, it's moving up and down. And I've got like my PFD on, and I've got ice augers stuffed into those ice picks stuffed into my sleeves in case I go in, but I don't want to go in. So I rode here for a little bit. It was great. So I got to get on that ice, but it was getting dark out. So it wasn't great video. My Insta360 camera that I'm using here for this is not great in the dark. I wanted those bright blue skies like that guy had. And then I went, I'm gonna jump back to whoops. I gotta jump. What happened there?
Yeah, years ago I did a polk sled and then we did
so this is me riding, and this is Mitros Landing.
Oh, okay.
So this is Mitros Landing. I didn't park on the landing. I parked up there because there's said, there's a big sign that says it's closed and private. And there's a house on the one side of Mitros and another house on the other side. And then there are all these, they must have shared. And then Lake Owen Resort is right over on the other side. Those lights, I think, are Lake Owen Resort. But you can see this is like 4:15. It's dark. It's really dark. Right. But this ice was all 3-4 inches thick, the guy said. But I still, in the dark, I felt nervous about going right up to the middle. So I'm like, I'm just going to ride. I'll come back tomorrow because it's not supposed to snow, and I'll bring my drone and all that stuff. Right. And then
thinking you had another chance.
Right, but look at if you look closely by my
look at your face. You're like, I don't know about this.
By my bike headlight, there's little. It started to snow right as I was packing up. So now Lake Owen is covered with snow. Right. Which is still, you can still ride it. It's still great, but it doesn't have that. It'll be curious to see what happens with this warmer temps coming in. Like if it gets better, it gets worse. I've been thinking about so Cook County, Minnesota, which is, for those who don't know, is a very pointy end of the arrowhead, up in the arrowhead in northern Minnesota, right at the border. Cook County goes down, I think, to Grand Marais. Maybe Lutzen's included in it. I don't know if Lutzen might not be all the way. But anyway, it's that far pointy end right up on the Canadian border. They have a Facebook group called Cook County Lake Skaters. So they are constantly reporting on lake conditions and black ice and stuff like that. And I know this because Hansi Johnson is a Facebook member of that group, and I saw Hansi. Hansi, for those don't maybe remember, Hansi was the IMBA. They had a IMBA in our region. So anyway, he's still up in Thompson, Minnesota, outside of Duluth. He posted him and Tay like black ice skating up in Cook County, and he tagged that Facebook group. So then I joined that Facebook group, and it's a great resource for finding black ice and skatable ice and good ice conditions, thicknesses, and stuff like that. So, but it's like a 3.5 hour drive to get up there, and I think everything's kind of south of there is like us. We got just snow on it. Again, it's still perfectly fine to skate on or to fat bike on, but it doesn't have that awesome black ice look. Whereas like the stuff up, they didn't get the snow up by like Caribou Lake and LAX, and there's a bunch of Mink Lake and stuff all up in the northern part.
Yeah, there's no shortage of lakes up there.
Right, I know. Yeah, the boundary waters. They didn't get the snow. So those lakes are still all black ice.
And I bet they've been a little bit colder too.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So I don't know. I've been debating going up there tomorrow because we're supposed to get snow again on Friday.
Yeah.
Or if I should just say, again, I'm constantly chasing these ephemeral things that last for, and I'm like, can't I should just, we've got warm weather, I should just go bike rafting. Right, or something. Rather than drive, because I can do that around here. I can bike raft the Namakagon rather than drive 3.5 hours to find some ice.
I've been doing the same thing with, I do the same thing with like snowboarding, like, we should be snowboarding in the back of Scott's house right now, but now I'm driving to Wausau this weekend.
So in this video, let me put this back on for people. So that's an otter. I found these tracks, which I hadn't seen before. See those footprint slide?
Yeah.
Footprint slide. And I was like, what are those? What kind of... And I was really like, oh, otters. And they're like skateboarders on ice. When the ice comes, otters become like skateboarders. They kick, glide. And so I found those, and I followed them to like a hole in the ice with all kinds of snow missing. And so I figured, oh yeah, otter den. So they're on Silverthorn too.
Yeah.
I've never seen an otter though swimming in the summer on Silverthorn. But those tracks are on Silverthorn.
No, because it's... I always joke that if I could be any animal, that's what I'd be. Because they play. All they do is like hang out and
that's the otter. That's the otter.
Super cool.
And then just very quickly for folks, I thought I'd give I rode. We can talk about. Yeah, boy, there's too much to talk about. So I did pack raft. I did pack raft the Namakagon, and this is what I think I'll probably do tomorrow rather than drive all the way up. I probably get out there again. So my latest winter pack rafting, but you've done this before.
Yep.
Winter pack rafting. Cheap pair of waders, $25 pair of waders from Walmart, and just
do it.
Bike up to, I just biked up to Mossbeck Landing for this one because the paddle is so slow, and I wasn't sure how warm I'd be sitting in the cold water, with just waders on and a pair of like soft shell pants underneath. I was fine actually, but so I didn't want to go all the way up to like cable, and that's a 4-hour paddle.
Yeah.
So you've done it on skis even, right?
Yeah, I skied the Birkie, and then I skied almost the Birkie. I got off on the north end, on the classic only trail, and I got off, went to the north end cabin, and then walked across the street into the woods and jumped in the Namakagon
and paddled back to Seeley.
Paddled back to Seeley.
Yeah, and that's where I get out, right behind the Sawmill Saloon always. So that's where I get out. But but I did want to give a little update on the trail conditions too for folks. So gravel, so you don't need studded tires. I'm gonna put that up. I videoed, this is me on Bodecker. Oops. Back up just, okay, now we're up. And we're back in the corner. So that's me on Bodecker, turning off where they're logging right now. That So this is, I'm calling it Jimmy Walker Road because it's where the dynamite shack is. So you can see though, I've got studded tires on, but you totally do not need, unless you're riding on lakes or something. All the gravel is just great. Nobody needs studded tires right now. And then I get to I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit because this is it's kind of a long road in.
No, but even
there's the dynamite shack.
Cool.
I don't necessarily believe it's truly a dynamite shack.
Yeah, I've always heard it was, and I heard that's why it's concave.
And it says Camp 42 up in the corner of the door, but the roof,
well, it's like a concrete roof, right?
No, it's just a wood roof. So it's thick walls, but that's how anybody would build a cabin if they're building them out of found.
I think that, yeah.
Well, everybody calls it the dynamite shack.
Right.
But I think it probably was like some old hunt. You used to be able to put up cabins anywhere in the forest and go deer hunting.
Well, the reason I had always heard it was the dynamite shack was because of it was built by the CCC at the same time they built the other camp, and it was the building that was far away from the other camp. So if it blew up,
I've heard all this. But there's like an old meat pole here for hanging.
Yeah, at one point there were people like actively hunting out of there.
Yeah, I go in into the shack, and there are, and show people the bunk beds and stuff like that, and then it says Camp 42 like right up in the corner there, but I don't know. That doesn't look like that's from the CCC era.
Right, no.
And it could be, but you can see the roof is just logs. But yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But it's a good story, I guess. But so trail conditions are great. I rode Seeley Pass too. Seeley Pass is fine. I guess check Cabot Trail.
Yeah.
And stuff about, but anybody coming up, although we don't have any groom trails, you can ride everything that you can normally ride. Right, and you don't even need a fat bike, really.
Yeah, especially in the mornings if it does warm up, that'd be bad or whatever. But in the mornings, I've been looking at all my old Bandit lines. Like there's one here, and like it'd be perfect. Yeah. Because everything's frozen, and
as long as you're riding those trails when it's frozen, and Canada doesn't officially have them closed. Basically, I mean, you can ride any Canada trail that you can ride in the summertime, and you can ride with your mountain bike. You don't need a fat bike.
I thought Canada was doing a good job of. We were talking about signage earlier for Telemark and whatnot, but I thought they did a really good thing about putting the onus back on the rider. Isn't all their verbiage? It's about, hey, this is on you. Ride if you're leaving a dent.
Right.
Be responsible. But the way they worded that was really good. It wasn't like, trails closed, assholes. Right. It was like, hey, dude,
Yeah. Well, yeah, so, I don't know, we've talked for a little bit, I guess, so we can probably wrap this up unless there's anything else you got for this one.
No, I'm sure there's tons of stuff.
We'll do it again next week.
We could.
Now that you've got a little bit more bandwidth.
Sounds good. Sounds really good.
Okay, all right, thanks again. Hey, so I hope you enjoyed that chat with TJ about our conditions and the trails at Telemark and what to look forward to for next year and all that sort of stuff. I did want to jump in before I left, and one more mention. I am pleased to announce that I've got, thanks to Old Man Mountain, I was purchasing a rack from them. I had some tech questions and stuff, so I was emailing back with their customer support, and Old Man Mountain was looked at my website, saw I had this bikepacking gear lending library, and even though I just bought a rack from them, they were kind enough to donate 4 more Old Man Mountain divide racks. So they've donated 2 of the regular mountain bike size, and then 2 of the fat bike size. So these racks fit virtually any bike. Sometimes you might need to get a different adapter kit for them, but they're honestly set up just as they come to fit most bikes, as long as you've got rack mounts. If you don't have rack mounts, then you need one of their Axle Project through axles and their pucks. But those are available from most of your local bike shops. I know New Moon and Riverbrook both can get those adapters for you. But so anyway, if you're planning on doing any winter ultras, if you've been looking at that cool new winter ultra calendar that Josh has got set up on the northweb.com website, and you don't have a rack, I've got fat bike racks and regular mountain bike racks for you. So you can borrow those from me. And anyway, again, thanks to TJ for coming on this ramble. Thanks to you all for coming on this ramble and for sticking with me over that the hiatus. Hopefully that's over, and we're going to keep coming to you every week or two. And Seeley Dave signing out.
God, I missed the North Country, no power lines, no dead end streets.